Ladies and gentlemen, you're now tuned into Mock Draft Friday, episode 6, as the Cowboys are beginning their road to chase number 6. And the show starts now.
BJ Nix, are you here?
Present.
Spoonie, Timothy Spoonie.
Present, sir.
Margaret and Mary. Do we have a Margaret and Mary?
Yes. And the margaritas.
Right. We're ready. Let's go.
Yes, let's go.
This is the time to line up behind your team, to support your team, have faith in that team.
You know, it's peaks and valleys. You know, it can't always be good. And as I always tell people, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. But when we do know about
house call, Trevon Diggs, pick 6. It's coming. They see it. Knocked away. Oh, Gregory! Hurts in trouble. 3 Cowboys wrap him up, make it 4. Micah Parsons is unblockable.
And here we are. Is microphone out? It felt like it got a little loud all of a sudden. Am I good? My microphone hot? We good now? Make sure on this side we're good. Unlike last week where, my goodness, it was way out of pocket. All right. What's going on, Cowboys Nation? What's going on? Pick a 6 Sports fam. We're back and live in the building. And I guess, you know, to start things off here for episode 6, as we got through the first week of free agency, we'll pay our due diligence, if you will, to the 7-year run, the fastest running back ever to 10,000 total yards, the one, the only, Mr. 21, Ezekiel Elliott. Salute to you, brother. Appreciate everything you've done for this organization. Unfortunately, not enough to get done here to get the championship home while your time was here, but will always be a part of the lineage of the Dallas Cowboys. So salute to everything he's did for this organization. We wish him well moving forward. Nothing but a celebration of Zeke and what he meant. It's not going to be the same. We'll be able to get our eat on during the year. But we appreciate everything, man. Dom, how are we doing this Friday, brother?
Man, it's a fantastic Friday. I've been waiting to jump into this space with y'all, be able to talk more draft. It's actually my favorite position group, the offensive linemen. So let's get it.
Yes, sir. We're doing them top 10 offensive tackles tonight. Oh, how's your Friday going, brother? How we doing, man?
It's good. Happy Friday, everybody. Yeah, it's kind of echoing what you talked about with Zeke. I mean, it's one of those things. It's okay as a fan to be upset, disappointed with the way things ended up with Zeke because he was a great player. It didn't work out, and that's not his fault. Like we've seen this, right? We had DeMarcus Ware, Jason Witten, Tony Romo, Dez Bryant. We've had a lot of good players in the past where we just weren't able to get to where we need to go. And as a running back, in all positions in football, but especially at running back, the reality is the more carries you get, the more wear and tear. You're getting hit by defensive linemen, defensive ends are crashing in on you, taking out your legs, linebackers, safeties. Like it's a lot of contact to absorb. And you don't get plays off because when you're not running the ball, you're in pass pro or running a route. So inevitably you're going to break down. And that's not a Zeke specific thing. That's the reality for all running backs. Like we saw that with Adrian Peterson and
Right.
LaDainian Tomlinson, and any great running back you name, they're going to tail off. So it is what it is. The contract, I think, was the big sticking point for the Cowboys in the Cowboys fan base, but the Cowboys gave him the deal, right? Zeke held out, but ultimately the team, Jerry and Steven, were the ones that caved. It's not Zeke's fault. You can blame Zeke for threatening to hold out in Cabo and all that stuff, but the team ultimately is the one who gave him the contract. So appreciate what he did. I've not always been the biggest Zeke fan, but it's not that I don't like him as a person. I just, I was seeing the downfall or decline, and I was afraid that it was going to get pretty ugly, and thankfully he was still relatively productive the last few years, even with the knee injury. So I appreciate him toughing out games, playing through injuries and all the stuff that he did, but I absolutely think we did the right thing. So I just want to let you guys know it's okay to feel upset about something, but also agree with the decision. You don't have to take either or side. You can feel both in this situation. So appreciate you, Zeke. Best of luck wherever you go, but let's go Cowboys.
Right. And I think, my biggest takeaway with Zeke is simply coming in very young, very wide open to the world, and watching him mature throughout his process here, and, giving back to the community, the things he did in the community, and, watch him become a man in a lot of certain extents. Not that he wasn't a man when he got here, but, the maturity level and how he grew his time here. Appreciative of it and becoming that leader in the locker room and everything else. So salutes everything he's did. Ultimately getting to the brass tacks here of free agency and talking about it. We mentioned the contract before. I think our very first Mock Draft Friday episode, we talked about what life would look like without both running backs, right? And Dom, you kind of broke down like the situation was, hey, you can take the pay cuts, right? So we'll have the player plus save the money. If not, then it turns into the June 1st situation where you get the full 10.9. And ultimately, they had a conversation. His representation said they were going to go to the combine and find out what his worth was. Once they sat down, the reports are, they stepped to Zeke. Now, we don't know about the money side of things, right? But him being a backup, and apparently the worth that they were told in the combine, his team thought it would figure him to be a starter still. And, that was the straw that broke the camel's back here.
Yeah, and you just hate to see it. I don't think any fan should be, celebrating the fact that he's no longer on the team, and said it was a pretty sad day. But we felt it coming. We knew it was coming.
Right.
And for the team, what we've heard released is that a conversation was had with Jerry, and it wasn't even about money at this point. They felt it was time to move on, let him go, and have the last few years of his career to be able to do what he needs to do, but the team needed to move forward from a building standpoint. And so it's kind of like a mutual parting, really, still leaning on the side of the franchise wanting to part ways, because I'm sure Zeke probably wanted to return to be with the guys that he's balled out with. There's only 10 of them left.
Yeah.
10 of them left from the pre-McCarthy era, and Dak being the sole guy from that 2016 draft. So, man.
Yeah.
But it was time.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL, right? It stands for not for long. You got to strike while the iron's hot. And, Dak even kind of talked about that some, right? And he, said, time is, no way to sugarcoat it. We're here. It's time. And we got to move forward. So we'll get into some of these moves here. Obviously, the Cowboys, couple guys left the building, right? Connor McGovern's gone.
Mm-hmm.
He signed off. He's where did he end up going? Buffalo, right? I think he signed in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Luke Gifford's out of here as well too. The one and only wide receiver, Mr. Brown, is no longer here. He stayed in the state of Texas. He's down in Houston, no longer on the board. The Cowboys did some retaining, right? They got back LVE. A great deal for LVE, right, Dom?
Right. Yeah. I mean, to think in a market where linebackers were getting $6 million all the way up to $10 million, who were in his realm of productivity, and for them to be able to get him at what would average out at $5.5 million, and to see what the cap hits are at $3 and $4 million for the 2 years. I don't know how Steven does it, but those are the kind of deals that he is excellent at executing. And so you definitely want to welcome a talent like that back, as we needed some help there in the linebacking room, and it still doesn't prevent you from going into the draft or even trying to find another body to help solidify the overall depth for the linebacking room.
10-4. And then, the guy that we thought was going to get out of here, right? Donovan Wilson, they found a way to get him back in the building.
Yeah, reports earlier in the week. I think we all saw the tweets, and LVE not likely to come back. Donovan Wilson not likely to come back. We did hear, from different channels on social media, YouTube, Twitter, and all that they were working or wanted to bring Donovan Wilson back, but it seemed like when those tweets started surfacing that they, kind of prioritized other players and weren't really sure if they were going to be able to pay Donovan. So, 2 off seasons in a row, right? Like we went through the same sweated out thing last year with Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse, and Kearse was the one that kind of lingered, and we were like, is this deal going to happen? And you started seeing it's likely he's going to leave, and then they were able to bring him back to a team-friendly deal. I think the Donovan Wilson contract was great because if you look at the market value for safeties, obviously it depends on what type of safety, if you're a box safety or free safety in terms of what your market value is, but safeties get paid. The defensive backs in the NFL make a lot of money, so I was looking at his market value in that 10 to 12 million range, like somewhere in there. I'm like, if we can ink him there, I feel pretty good about that. So getting him where he came in, I thought was a great deal. I'm happy he's back. And it's cool to see the camaraderie too. Like Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse could be like, we're the safeties. We appreciate you, but we're higher in the pecking order than you. But both of them were extremely vocal on Twitter. Like, have you seen the news on Donovan Wilson? Where's the Donovan Wilson news? They wanted their guy to get paid, and when he got paid, they were there to celebrate. So I thought it's cool having that 3-headed monster and being able to be very versatile in the way that you attack an offense. I mean, when you have Jaron Kearse and Donovan Wilson that are both good pass rushers, right? Donovan Wilson with 5 sacks last year, that's crazy for a safety. Mm-hmm. So being able to have that versatility, to have 3 different guys and Izzy and Marquise Bell behind it. I mean, we have a lot of fun opportunities in the way that they can utilize this defensive back. So I thought it was a great deal.
Cowboys Fanatic says, I keep hearing that we technically haven't released Zeke till June 1st. Any chance we keep him? No, because basically how that works is they designate him a June 1st cut so that he can go ahead and get out here in free agency and land somewhere else. But what happens is the $10.9 million that the Cowboys are getting back in cap space won't land until June 1st. So basically that 10.9, if you see like the Cowboys cap space that's a little inflated, is because some places are putting the 10.9 million in there now. Cowboys can't touch that. They can go sign somewhere else, but the 10.9 doesn't hit till after June 1st. And that's where you're going to take that money. That's going to secure your draft class. If you want to make another move here or there, it'll secure that as well too. So that's going to be after June where they'll get that money. But he's effectively a free agent and can sign anywhere that he wants to.
Real quick, since you're on that lane, will you go ahead and explain to people how the franchise tag works too? Because I think that might be where people get confused, that you can designate a franchise tender and then rescind it. Right. You can't do that for June 1st. So I think that might be why people ask that. So if you could just explain to people.
So with the franchise tag that's designated on Pollard right now, that he hasn't signed yet. So that's going to come in at 10.1 million, I believe is the cap for the for the running backs this year. Yeah, so that's a piece of the pie that is sectioned off once he signs. But now what the Cowboys can do, if they wanted to, until he signs that franchise tag, they could rescind it and then negotiate a deal on the back end or whatever. So it is very intriguing to me. Like, we're seeing the running back market right now. If I'm Pollard's agent and we're seeing this money and how it's breaking down, I'm telling Pollard to run to the Star right now in Frisco and sign this thing immediately. Now, ultimately, I don't think the Cowboys are going to rescind it. It's a bad faith kind of business deal, but it's an interesting concept to see where the running backs are coming in at, where you could pull that and then maybe roll the dice and try to get a cheaper deal done with him, but you do run the risk that he could get out of the building, Dom.
Yeah, because right now what we see, we walked into free agency looking at the running back class thinking, my goodness, it is stacked. And these guys are gonna get paid. But what occurred was franchise tags applied to guys like Josh Jacobs and also Barkley. So they weren't able to hit the market to be able to inflate the prices of running backs. So instead, what you saw, the top paid running back in this class ended up being Miles Sanders at $6.25 million per year, and it's a 3-year deal. Pretty much all of these guys ended up getting 2 to 3 year deals underneath that $6 million mark.
Right.
So you wonder if Tony Pollard would have been able to hit free agency instead of Dallas applying the tag, where his agent couldn't negotiate with other teams to see what his worth was out in the market. You wonder if he would have gotten much more than a Miles Sanders, or how much over Miles. Right. So that's why the idea of, oh man, should they rescind it if he hasn't signed it? We don't know the details of all of that, but it does make you question, like, did they overestimate what the running back market would be? And is Pollard really worth having that $10 million cap hit because of the franchise tag versus trying to extend him to a contract that is 2 to 3 years worth upwards of maybe $7 million a year? And so that's been an interesting topic for us the last couple of days because of how watered down the running back group looked as far as the contracts that they received.
And Ro here says, Ocha said only the difference between the post-June 1st and pre-June 1st is held until post-June 1st. We get some relief now.
Yeah, so I'll explain that in the easiest terms as possible. So when you cut a player pre-June 1st, any money that's remaining, which is dead, which will be classified as dead money, which is anything like a prorated signing bonus, a restructure bonus, anything like that, escalates to this year. So that's how you potentially, depending on how much dead money versus what their base salary is, you could get a little bit of cap relief now. So that's what he's referring to. So in the Zeke situation, if you cut him now, his base salary is higher than what his remaining guaranteed money would be. So you would get a small amount. I think it was $4 or $5 million, something like that, would have been opened up immediately.
Yeah.
But if you hold on to him or designate him as a post June 1st cut, you split the dead money into two things. So half of the money hits this year, and that's the money that is a signing bonus or a restructure bonus that hits this season. Anything in future years, like if you have a void year, anything like that would count for next year. So you can actually split that money. It's not a 50-50 split, but you'll take some this year and some next year, which gives you more cap relief. So when you take a smaller portion of that dead money towards his base salary, which would be freed up, you would save $10.9 million. So that's why they elected to do that, saying, we'll just sit on that because teams need about $10 million of cap space anyways going into the season. It allows you to have roster flexibility and be able to maneuver. Right. But it also helps pay for your rookie draft class. So that's one of the reasons they opted to do that. But yes, technically the difference in a June 1st or pre-June 1st and post-June 1st is the amount of dead money that hits and when it hits. You could save money either way, but typically a post-June 1st is going to save you more.
Yeah. And then to cap off the Tuesday, the Cowboys snuck one in. They got the LVE. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, Donovan Wilson. And then they said, hey, here's Stephon Gilmore, guys, for our 5th round pick. And the crowd went wild. It's like, oh, Gilmore for a 5th? Okay. And not only was it a 5th, it was one of the comp 5th. So technically it's a quote unquote freestyle kind of a draft pick there. So Tuesday was the cherry on top of all week long here, getting those two guys back in, Donovan Wilson, and then of course LV, and then making the trade obviously for for Stephon Gilmore. So guys, Stephon Gilmore coming in here, big deal, small deal, where do you land there?
Yeah, I'm the resident here that is also a Colts follower, and what I saw out of Stephon Gilmore was a player that definitely still has a lot left in the tank, especially enough left to be able to play at a pretty high performance level here in this next season. And back on, I think it was January 23rd, I tweeted out that this was going to be a possibility that the Colts decide to go ahead and move on from him so they could save about $10 million on their cap space, knowing that they're trying to do a little mini reboot and a rebuild. But didn't think that Dallas would be the team that would be in play for him for a trade like that, because we just haven't seen them go out and get a named guy like that who still has something left in the tank. They did it with Robert Quinn. I should say, where they gave up, I believe it was a 5th-round conditional pick. But to go out and get a guy like Stephon Gilmore, who's a step ahead, didn't dream of that one bit, that he'd be coming to Dallas for a 5th-round pick. But for the Colts, it made all the sense. And for a contender to bring in a talent like that to maybe hopefully get you over the top, that makes sense. So it's a perfect marriage for where Steven worked his magic and got a talent like Stephon Gilmore to join the Cowboys. And now look at our defensive backfield, and also it helps alleviate some pressure to go and maybe double dip in a draft, or maybe pick a guy a little bit early because you have to window dress, thinking you have to cover that need.
Right. And obviously it solves the outside cornerback problem now, because now Bland can legitimately be your slot guy. And now you got your 2 outside guys, with Brown, with the injury he had last year, free agent, you got to worry about trying to find that in the draft per se. Not, you can't go draft a guy, but now you have Gilmore and Diggs on the outside, setting this defense up for 23.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at our secondary, like what we had to roll out there in the playoffs, we have Diggs and just a bunch of guys, and the guys did the best they can do kind of in the circumstances. But I mean, we that was asking a lot. And this year, depending on what they do with Jordan Lewis, and the early indication is they plan on keeping him. So you feel pretty comfortable about the first 4 defensive, or the first 4 cornerbacks on the depth chart. So that's a good thing. Also, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do, because this is the last year of his contract, Stephon Gilmore's contract. So do they extend him now for a couple of years to kind of, bank on having him for a few years? Do they just let the season play out and then look at next offseason renegotiating again? So I'm kind of curious to see what happens with that. But I thought it was a great move. The only downside to this move is it kind of set us up with, I don't want to say unrealistic expectations, but different expectations for this offseason than what we typically do. Because around probably 3:30 or so Central Time, a tweet from Michael Lombardi came out. Looks like the Cowboys might make a trade for a cornerback. So that happens, and then people were like, who could it be? And, all the names start getting tossed out there, because Ramsey's obviously off the board, but is it Okuda, or what cornerback could it possibly be? And then Stephon Gilmore happens like 25 minutes after that tweet. So now Cowboys Nation's like, we got Donovan Wilson back. We got LVE on a good contract. We just traded for Stephon Gilmore. We're being aggressive. And now some whispers about wide receivers. And we're like, refreshing the page repeatedly to see if there's any moves. So there may be a move. We'll see about that. But it was cool to see. I didn't expect that to happen so suddenly, because as you can see with DeAndre Hopkins and the OBJ, a lot of stuff, not everything, but a lot of stuff in Cowboys Nation is out there before it happens. So you kind of feel it coming. You know that they're negotiating. You know that they like a certain player. And every once in a while, they do surprise us. So it was a pleasant surprise. I think he's going to be a great 1-2 to go with Diggs.
And then, of course, the rest of the week, a little tempered, but added some things, though. CJ Goodwin back, the special teams ace, right? First guy to lead the Cowboys in special team tackles 3 years straight. So he's back in the building. Cooper Rush, at a certain point last year, there was a lot of pundits, a lot of people, thought he would be a starter for a team in this league, maybe a bridge gap guy for someone. Some people in Cowboys Nation said he should start over Dak. Well, he comes back on a 2-year deal, a very team-friendly 2-year deal to remain here as the backup. The NFL kind of spoke, and I guess no offers came in for him. But again, good depth, right? What he did last year for us, going 4-1. You get Goodwin back in the building as well. And then, of course, all the things at wide receiver. Of course, in the Cowboys, they restructured. I didn't think they would restructure D-Law. The Gallup thing didn't surprise me, right? They got Tyron Smith. We already talked about Zeke, obviously, out of the building now. They got the Tyron Smith deal done, right? And then they went and touched D-Law. Were y'all surprised by the D-Law restructure?
No, honestly, okay. I think what surprises people is they were still stuck on thinking of him being under that old contract before last year. And you saw that cap hit was like $27 million for this season. But whenever he made a drastic cut to his salary, pretty much, I think he ended up taking about a $10 million trim, I believe it was, and basically reworked his deal where it was 3 years on it. you kind of could see, all right, that thing has the potential to flip one switch of a restructure. Though I still didn't think they would do it. But now that they have, once they did it, it wasn't a big surprise because now it just flips when his next big hit will be. So this year they get some relief. Next year he'll be, I believe, a $20 million hit. And if he's still producing like he did this past season, where you saw a true resurgence from him, not that he was, a below level, a below mid-level type of player, he was definitely producing the last couple of years. But man, this past year, Tank did his thing. And so for this year and next year, you think he's still worth that cap hit. So to still work some things out. But yeah, it wasn't a huge shock, but I was a bit surprised they actually flipped.
Yeah, the timing. Yeah, I thought maybe it would be something to do next year, but neither here nor there. Gallup and the restructure with D-Law. Surprised by either one of those, or?
No, the D-Law one I definitely thought was going to happen. The Gallup one, I'm surprised happened, and especially because obviously we had the Tyron Smith news with his rework contract, but having that and Gallup in back to back, that seemed to signal to me and I think a lot of us that there's a reason they're doing that. Why are you opening up all that money if you're just planning on saving it till the draft and kind of flirting with players for the next 6 weeks? So to me, it signaled that they were going to make a move. Maybe they still are, but I am surprised, frankly, based on what Gallup did last year. And typically they do say that receivers coming off of an ACL, the second year is where you really see a big improvement. So hopefully that's the case, because with what I saw last year, I would not have touched his contract. And knowing that we didn't make a move, in hindsight, I still probably would not have touched it. But it is what it is. He's going to be here. So let's hope for the best. We get Michael Gallup from 2 or 3 years ago back, because that would be a welcome addition. So, yeah, I'm surprised they did that, especially because they didn't make a move on the heels of that. But I guess we'll see.
And of course, it got his cap number down from like 13, a little over 13, down to like a little over 6. So they saved $7 million there with Gallup. But obviously it frees some things up, and then things are happening with D-Hop, and some things happening with Odell, and percolating. But these things take time. I think there is a move that's going to be had. And look, we talked about this in the space, me and Dom did, that the deal that LVE signed doesn't preclude them from going out here and getting Wagner. And interesting enough, there was I forgot the account they put out here. Wagner right now, the top 2 teams he's most tied to currently, the word is Seattle and Dallas. So, I don't think Wagner's out of the equation here yet with the minute they have freed up, depending on how they want to move. So they have options. Now, I know Cowboys, we've not seen this team move in the first week of free agency in this way in a very long time. So as the money was freeing up, we're like, oh, well, what's next? It's Christmas. Bring it on in. Wide receiver, Wagner, whatever. Let's make it happen. And then it kind of slowed up a little bit, and now the due diligence is kind of kicking in. But there's options still here across the board for things that they can do. If you were a betting man, what's the position or the move you think they make between now and the draft? You just go position, or 2 positions, or 1 position, or 3 positions, or 0 positions.
I do think they're going to make a move on an offensive lineman, probably an interior guy like a guard center, because there's still some decent depth out there. Not necessarily somebody that'll come in and immediately be a starter, but somebody that can add some, backup flexibility. So I would bet on that one. But in terms of the big ones, people are, refreshing their Twitter for and checking ESPN notifications nonstop. I feel like wide receiver is more likely than linebacker. At this point, I'm starting to lose a little bit of faith that it's going to be one of the bigger names that we're expecting. But I do think they're going to make a move to get some type of veteran presence in here, whether that's DJ Chark, Mecole Hardman, probably not Isaiah McKenzie because he's too Turpin-ish in terms of size. And that's not necessarily the profile they go for anyways. And the draft is full of guys like that. So I don't think he would make any sense. But I do think there's a couple guys out there in free agency that could be a nice veteran addition to the rotation. And then you would still draft. Just like you mentioned with LVE, that move does not signal you can't continue to go after Wagner or Miles Jack, for instance. And Miles Jack probably is a name that should be mentioned more because the Cowboys have liked him and been linked to him last year when he signed with the Steelers after the Jags released him. And we liked him in the draft. So possible fit. We'll see if they do anything with that. But if I had to guess, I'd say a wide receiver, Mecole Hardman, DJ Chark, somebody like that.
So you think wide receiver and offensive lineman are the two positions they'll have before the draft?
Yeah, if I was betting, those would be the two.
Okay. All right. Dom, 2, 1, 3, 0. How many positions? Well, what positions do you think they'll have before the draft?
Yeah, to me, they have to address the interior of the defensive line. And it could be a minor little pickup. So to me, I think Watkins makes the most sense to bring him back because he's still relatively young. You can get him for the cheap, and he was solid for you this past season. I think a guy like a Jonathan Hankins, because he is a little bit older, and you're able to get him off of the street basically for a pick with the Raiders because they really weren't using him right. But he's the kind of guy who's at the point of his career where I know in the past y'all have used like the assassin type, where just take your time. You'll still get a little bit of money, but now you kind of pick which team is a contender, and then you want to join that team because you're looking to get a Super Bowl ring, and then you still get paid. So somebody like a Jonathan Hankins, I think he's a signee where it's into the summer. But a guy like Hankins, or what's his name? I just said it. Just escaped.
Watkins.
Yeah, Watkins. I think that's a guy you're trying to get secured before the draft, so you can fill a hole and then let the draft fall to you.
Okay. So you think a defensive tackle and linebacker? Is that's the two? Or just defensive tackle?
Defensive tackle, and then the next one would be a receiver. There's just too much smoke about them wanting to trade for a receiver, and we know the names that keep swirling. So I think they want to get that done. The fact that we have all this smoke shows that they have expressed the need to fill it, to address receiver. So I'd go interior defensive lineman because it's easier to get one signed, but receiver may take a little bit of time because if you're trading for a guy like a D-Hop, that just takes a little bit to be able to get all the parties coordinated to be able to make the contract work and then make the compensation work on the trade.
Got you. Man, I've been heavy the past couple of days. We got to get a D tackle in here, guys. A one tech. I'm just, I have nightmares of going back to what this team looked like before Hankins got here and how things moved. So, and obviously they lost, Ridgeway when they played when they released him. In Washington ended up picking him up before we get him back on the practice squad. So yeah, for me, Hankins, Watkins, Campbell, maybe. I mean, one of these guys I want to get in here for sure. I'm with you. I think there's just too much smoke at the wide receiver room. I think to a certain degree, some of the things that has happened with D-Hop, they don't like. I think they want to kind of just like Gilmore. Boom, done. Now here, let's handle business. I know there's a lot of different reports of winning the trade and different things and stuff like that. But it really feels like, in something we've talked about long at length, the Cowboys have to add a guy prior to the draft and draft a guy. And the one thing I've always said is, depending on what kind of tier guy that you add, and there ain't got to be none of these names that we're talking about, but depending on the tier guy that you add prior to the draft will affect where you want to draft a guy at. And I think that's just how, I think that plan is still in place, and maybe it's not one of the bigger name guys, even though they're trying to do, some moves there. It seems that way, but they're going to add a wide receiver, I believe. They'll change how they draft a guy. I think you'll get defensive tackle done. And then I don't want to go more than 3. I don't. And I'm torn between the linebacker and the offensive line a little bit. I think if the Cowboys are going to try to set themselves up to do maybe something early with the offensive line, so we're talking about them tonight, I think maybe they go linebacker and then maybe kind of get a clear view of, I know O's not going to like this, at 26, maybe a particular guard sitting there and they'll draft another offensive lineman here in the first round to Professor O's chagrin. But, it feels like that might be the road that they take. But definitely D-tackle, definitely wide receiver, and then I'll coin flip O-line or linebacker that they get in here before the draft is where I would land on that.
Yeah.
It's a great point there by Brandon as well about Deion Jones.
Yeah. I saw in the comment somebody said to mention the whole comp pick formula
Mhm.
and how that would impact Dallas and the type of guys that they may go after that's still left in free agency. Remember, Stephen Jones and the Cowboys, they are the second best franchise at being able to get comp picks. I think over this last stretch of years, they've outdone every single team except it's either Baltimore or New England. I can't remember which one, but still, those three teams love their comp picks. And for Dallas, though, to make sure that they don't acquire a free agent or a player that would impact that comp pick formula, guys that have been cut from their team, released from their team, like Ezekiel Elliott, we just released him. Well, if a team goes out and gives him a nice little contract, that doesn't count for the Cowboys in 2024 and getting a compensatory pick because we released him. However, for players out there that have been released, like a Bobby Wagner, how he and LA decided to mutually part ways so Wagner can go and find himself on a contender because the claim is he wants to play for the chance to win another Super Bowl. Well, he's out there. He's still free. He's another assassin type that I think is waiting to see how all this stuff shakes out because he too will still get paid. So if Dallas were to acquire a guy like Wagner, that doesn't count against our draft formula as far as the compensatory picks for next year. So we did a pretty good job in seeing Connor McGovern get a nice little contract from Buffalo. Nothing we've added will cancel that out. So we're looking to see maybe a 5th rounder or 6th round comp pick for him next year. But if you see anybody like Bobby Wagner, Leonard Floyd, if we trade for someone, that also doesn't count against us in a comp pick. So that's why a D Hopkins or trading for Brandon Cooks, for example. I know Nick's has been on Cooks for what, 3-4 weeks? You've been in the spaces rocking with Cooks saying, hey, what about Cooks? Everybody's talking about DeAndre Hopkins. We're talking about as a pure free agent, a guy like OBJ, who also will not count if we get him because he didn't accrue a season last year. He was out the whole year. If he were exiting a team as a free agent just last year, that's a different story. But because he didn't play, it wouldn't count against us. But you've been the one saying, what about Cooks? What about Cooks? And here we are starting to see a little bit of smoke rise about Brandon Cooks and Houston maybe offering them up for a mid-round pick because they want to get rid of that salary. So, yeah, just consider trades and players that have been released.
Miles Jack, too. That's another name with Bobby Wagner. So Miles Jack would be another linebacker because he was recently released. So anybody who's cut and not an expiring contract, like Dom said, is not comp eligible. It won't impact that formula.
Right.
You got some D-Tackle Sports?
Yeah, so while you guys were talking, I was pulling this up real quick. Hopefully you guys can see it. So this is the best remaining defensive tackles according to SpotRack's website. So you can take a look there. There are a few names Dallas has been linked to in the past, like Michael Brockers. We've been linked to him like 3 times. He was actually the name before they traded up for Mo Claiborne that a lot of people thought we were going to take. So maybe they spin the wheels there again. Linval Joseph and Sue are names that are perennial Cowboys names, linked to us. So is there anybody there that you guys see that you think could be a nice veteran addition? Obviously, Hankins is on the list, but is there anybody else that jumps out to you guys?
I mean, Hurst is kind of cool.
The Kansas City guy, I can't remember how to pronounce his name. I remember him back in his draft, but he's one of those.
Talking about Saunders?
No, Derek.
Okay.
Nandi. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but he would be one of those types of picks where it reminds you of when they actually got a guy on this list years ago, Christian Covington.
Yeah.
He came in and did okay, relatively okay for the Cowboys, and he represents kind of the same thing that a guy like Carlos Watkins brings.
Yeah, Hankins. Can I just bring back Hankins? Maurice Hurst does intrigue me a little bit, though. But man, I just rather deal with the guy that I know that's in the building and where it's at and what he was able to do for us last year. So I just rather bring back Hankins off this list.
Yeah.
That's where I'd be at.
Yeah, I took a look when you guys were talking. I'm like, it's kind of bare. I mean, there's some names that could help in the rotation, but there's not the position's fixed. We got the guy now, so anybody on that list you're looking at as a rotational guy, and hopefully Quinn Bohanna takes a step forward, or maybe we land somebody in the draft, but not super deep at one tech right now.
Right, big facts. But with that being said, that kind of wraps up where we were at with free agency for the first week. Some highs, some lows, some in betweens. But boy, what a lot of action, more action than we're used to here with the Cowboys at week one of Teddy Plus Funny Swine. A lot of action for the Cowboys that we don't get in the first week of free agency. So definitely a lot of stuff that's happening with the Cowboys, and some things that look to seem to be possibly on the verge of happening. And we'll kind of stay fast here and see what happens on that front. But with that being said, time to continue our draft positional breakdown with this week's Pick Six Sports Top 10 available offensive tackles. We are now officially in Dom White's wheelhouse, ladies and gentlemen. He has been waiting for this from out the gate. So let's go ahead and throw up we got the overlay. Let's throw the overlay up there. Boom. And
so,
there it is. Go right ahead, O.
Yeah, so I'm going to go quick because I'm not offensive line guy. And I know that these two gentlemen can't wait to talk about this. So I'm just going to give you the real quick rundown again for people that maybe watched and missed how we come up with this. So we have 5 people. The 3 of us, our guy Spoonie, who's not here, and Mendoza, our mod extraordinaire, in the chat. We have a group chat, and every week we come up with our top 10 players individually at a certain position group. And then we add up points. So whoever gets a first place vote from Dom or Nix gets 10 points, and whoever gets a 10th place vote from those guys get 1 point. So we just go reverse order. So all I have to do is take the top 10 list and distribute the points, and that's how we came up with this list. We did have a tie. This is the second week in a row, and the top 2 tied with 44 points, but based on how they were ranked, we had more first place votes for Paris Johnson, so he wins. Tie goes to the runner in that situation. Flip a coin. But yeah, I think it's kind of fun to do this, and I'm really excited for the next 3 weeks because we're getting closer to the actual draft. So we're going to start speeding this up a little bit. So next week, we're going to hit you with 2 groups at a time. And then we're doing that for the next 2 weeks in a row. And then we're going to work on our top 50 list, which would be broken down into 2 segments. We have a lot of stuff coming towards you guys. But for this list, there's quite a bit of tackle depth in this draft. I think really you have 4, maybe 5 guys that are that first round, early second round quality guys. But overall, there's quite a few tackles that I think could be nice additions to the team. I don't want to go offensive line in the first round because we've done it 4 times in the last 13 years already, which is a lot. I'm not anti-offensive line in round 1. I'm just anti doing it as often as we do. So I would like to get somebody in round 2, 3, 4 that you can develop, but it is what it is. If the best player on the board is an offensive tackle, let's do it, because it allows you to have flexibility, especially with Steele coming back from an injury, Tyron Smith being perennial injured guy, and then Tyler Smith having tackle guard flexibility. So it just adds a lot of flexibility in the room if it happens to be that route. So we'll kind of see how the draft falls to us. But Dom, Nix, tell them about the offensive tackles.
Real quick, Crispy Bacon. He might show up next week too. Tune in and find out. Just letting you know. You gotta work these guys in there where they fit in. Man, I'm gonna get all the way out of here because I know Dom's been waiting for this. Man, I'm gonna sit back. I got me some salt and vinegar tater chips over here. I'll chime in where I need to. Dom, the floor is yours, sir. Go right ahead.
All right, so I'm gonna just kind of make a quick little rundown. Number one, the fact that we have Paris Johnson Jr. as the top guy isn't a huge shocker to me because he's super upside guy. He has a pretty nice little floor for him. He has some experience over a guy like Broderick Jones, and to me, their tags are touching. But what I think gives Paris Johnson the edge over Jones is the experience, yes, but also I think he has a little bit higher of a floor. But Jones might be the guy who has the highest ceiling, of all of these guys on the list because of just how purely athletic he is. And he only has, I think, 19 starts as a player. But Paris Johnson is an athletic left tackle. He's a true left tackle. That brings extra value in lists like these because it's still the blind side, and teams covet a guy who can protect that blind side. Peter Skoronski here, I believe if he were to be shifted down inside to be a guard here in the next level, he'd be guard number 1 on our list. However, he is a tackle, so we decided to go ahead and test him out here and evaluate him as a tackle. And he still is a pretty stout guy. And he's got great experience playing on the left side. His arm length is a bit of a concern. He didn't measure out like Rashawn Slater, whom everybody was concerned about with his arm length. Slater is a bit longer. Slater is a bit faster. Slater is a bit stronger. So he was able to go in the mid-first round. I just believe Skoronski would be best utilized and put him in a phone booth by shifting him on the inside, but he's still a pretty solid player. Broderick Jones, again, probably the most athletic guy here on the list. I believe he needs to stay out on the left side just by the way his movement skills are. He seems like to be a left side dominant guy. Probably a right-handed guy, but loves to take his first steps with the left foot. So I think he's good at dropping back in pass coverage and being a protector. Darnell Wright. This is a guy who has been shooting up draft lists here in the last couple of weeks because of the tape that he put out against Alabama. And if you watched it in season, you would have known that already. But not everybody is, draft Nick 24/7, 365. But he did a great job against Will Anderson. He did a good job against B.J. Ojulari. Even the young phenom who's a freshman for LSU, number 40, his name is escaping me right now. He'll eventually be a top 5 pick. That guy had nothing for Darnell Wright. So Wright's the kind of guy that in midstream during games, he'll change up his stance a bit. He'll change up his attack just to try on some things, and he'll do it against top talent. So I just see him having a lot more things in his tool bag than some of these other guys. And he's still an ascending guy on the right side. He's your true right tackle here. But for me, he's got some added value because he has the frame and the size to be able to shift him inside if you're the Dallas Cowboys. He was actually my offensive lineman number 1 overall. DeJuan Jones is the hardest one. He's a boom bust if there ever was whenever you apply that to this draft class, because I think he has tremendous potential right now. The length that he displays when guys are trying to loop around him and use their speed, he's able to get out and get them just enough. And then the power that he has is often having guys stop right dead in their tracks if they don't have a true pass rush plan for him. So you can't run in his midline at all because he's going to stone you. So you better figure out how you're going to attack this guy. Use a little bit of speed to maybe a quick little move and then power, or completely try to dip and bend on his outside. I think that's where he's going to have to work, is working in to get those guys off of him as they're trying to beat him to the outside, because he does a pretty good job of countering guys who try to do inside moves. And he too is more of your pure right tackles. So I have him right behind Darnell Wright if we were just splitting right tackles. So Wright would be right tackle 1. I still think he's overall offensive lineman 1 over everybody. And DeJuan Jones is right there behind him as a right tackle. And Harrison is a guy that if you looked at the preseason rankings, he probably didn't make many lists, but he put together a strong season for Oklahoma, being a left tackle for them. I think he's got a high floor. I don't know if he truly has the highest ceiling over all these guys. So I think that drops him down in many people's rankings. And he's kind of got the size and power to where he may potentially be a guy that a team would start out at guard if there's a need there first, and then transition him back to his home as a tackle, because I think he can cut it as a tackle. Matthew Bergeron has been one of my best favorite kept secrets. He's a guy that I think is going to end up working with Duke Manyweather here. You know, when Duke get his hands on people, they improve. You saw it happen with our boy Tyler Smith this past season, and then you saw it with Terrence Steele whenever he came out of Texas Tech. Steele is a completely different guy in the 3 years that he's been able to develop with the Cowboys. And so I think if you can get Duke to get his hands on a guy like Matt would work some wonders, whether you want to play him at left tackle or put him at left guard. I will say this. If you like the kid Murphy, number 98 for Clemson, you would use that tape of Clemson versus Syracuse to show why Murphy is a guy that should be a first-round player, because he's going against a guy who's probably a second-round left tackle in Matt Bergeron. So Bergeron, you know, he had some fits there going against Murphy, but still, I think he has the movement skills. He's probably the best athlete, actually, overall, everybody except for Broderick Jones. So I think if you get him in a zone blocking scheme and he's a left guard for us to start out, man, that looks good to me. Jalen Duncan is somebody that I mentioned all the way back in October-ish or maybe November, because I knew that he wouldn't get any nods for first round, maybe not even a second round. But I think the developmental aspect of his game is there. He has some upside. He's also an athletic guy. That's a common link about many of these dudes. They can move. And so Jalen Duncan out of Maryland, he's a guy that you need to keep an eye on as maybe a late second, early third kind of a player. He's long. He needs to add a little bit of strength, but he's got the quickness where you can work with him. Cody Mock was one of my top 5 offensive linemen to be looking out for this past season. He's coming from the small school of North Dakota State. I made a mistake last year and not really touting Volson, who played for them and ended up getting drafted. And so this year I was like, I'm not making that mistake. I'm going to put Cody Mock out there on the map for anybody that may follow us. He's been a left tackle for them. He's really not covered up quite a bit. So you see him working in space to get into scoop blocks. But when he puts his hands on guys, he's taking them all the way down the field. He's driving. He's mean and nasty. And we all like a guy with a little bit of dog and a little bit of nasty in him.
Yes, sir.
But many people are projecting him to move maybe on the inside, maybe all the way down to center. And you saw in the Senior Bowl where they had him interchange at both. But Cody Mock, it wouldn't surprise me if he's maybe a high second rounder because of that versatility for some teams. And then number 10, I'm going to actually reserve that one for Matt O, because honestly, Matt O put me on Freeland to make me go, I knew who he was, but you gave a little bit of a stat, and I was like, man, let me go back and rewatch him and see, because originally I would have had him as a late day 3 type, but I think he's going to go much higher than that because of his frame and his length and what he's actually produced as a college player.
Okay. He gives you the Blake Freeland for putting it on his timetable and lets you break down Mr. Freeland.
Yeah, so again, I grew up playing wide receiver, defensive back. So like those positions I have a really good grasp for. I've been into watching film for probably like 12 years now. So obviously trench is probably my least favorite to scout, but it also is probably the most interesting to scout, because when you're watching film, offense and defensive line, they're doing something every single play. Sometimes your safeties and cornerbacks and wide receivers aren't really involved at all in the play. So there may be several plays where you don't really have too much to actually watch, but offense and defensive line you do. So I was watching BYU, quite a few players that I was interested in watching, and when I was watching Jaron Hall, Blake Freeland just kept popping up, and I'm like, he's really athletic, long frame, he's skinny, he's probably gonna have to add some weight. But as I'm watching him, I noticed that he was doing a really good job with combo blocks. When they did stunts, he did a great job of passing off. He does play a little bit high. He's probably going to have to work on that. And that's something that a lot of these long-armed, tall offensive tackles in college do. They're a little bit too upright in their stance. And I think that's something he could work on. But overall, I thought he's an intriguing prospect. And I'm like, I don't see him on anybody's boards. Like, he never gets mocked to the Cowboys. And maybe he's just not a fit. But I kept watching film, and then Dom's our O-line guy. So I'm like, what do you think of Blake Freeland? Like, am I tripping? Like, what do you see here? And Dom checked him out and was like, yeah, I think you might be onto something there. So interestingly, he went to the combine and lit it up, had a great day. Some of the athleticism that you see on film when he's pulling and getting out in the screen game popped up as you see his 40 time. He's a good athlete. And now PFF has him in the top 150 or so. So he's starting to move up the boards because I think he's a guy, I hate to use, well, let's go, but that's kind of the hometown guy I can kind of point to, where if you put on some strength, put on a little bit of weight, give him a year or two to develop, like, he could become a Doug Free. Doug Free's probably a really good comparison for him coming out. Doug Free had a lot of the same things going against him, that he didn't have enough weight at the time. He's a little bit, of a taller prospect with some length and athleticism, and he turned out to be a pretty good player. I kind of see that with Freeland. I did want to mention a few more names because I want Knicks to get a chance to talk about it, and Mendoza's not here.
I don't need that. No, I'm not going to mess with perfection. Dom killed it. I'm not stepping on Dom's toes. Dom killed it. I don't need to say nothing.
Hey, so I do want to add some things because
by all means, Dom.
Go ahead, Dom.
Professor, you have been teaching me the last 2 years about like the nuances of the receiver position. I'm a fat dude, doughboy, big handsome as we called ourselves instead of the big uglies. I'm in the trenches. I'm doing the hard work, the dirty work. I'm the bodyguard for my quarterback. You don't touch my guy. I like when Lyle said that whenever he went to Cincinnati, but it's too bad that he couldn't stay on the field and stay healthy and really be the true bodyguard. But I was that guy. I'm still good friends with my old high school quarterback because I would protect him. I'm just a protector. But whenever you start learning a game as a young kid, playing football, and you're a lineman, and like, you're not going to be a skill guy. So you're going to have to really be a good teammate. First thing you learn as a kid is get in the proper stance, get the right balance, make sure you have the right posture. Then you start working on how do you fire out of that stance. So it's those initial steps. Right. There's different terminologies for it. Some might call like a little quick step to get you on the path you're supposed to go to one thing. Some may call a bigger drop step to get you more in a zone scheme. They might call it a bucket step. There's different terms, but you work on those initial 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. And then you see, what is your posture like? Where is your nose? Are you on the right plane? But then when you latch on, you're working on leverage. Leverage is key. That's why you want to fire it low, stay low. You don't want a guy who's too high, like Osiris Torrance. He's a little too high in his stance, a little too high in his posture. That's going to work against him in the league because you need to keep the leverage game on your side. Even though he's big and massive, he can be out leveraged at times.
Dom, I just want to ask you, so this is something that is interesting to me as I watch offensive linemen, because again, I'm the opposite of you, where like wide receivers, I feel great. Offensive line, I feel like I have a pretty good eye for, but I don't necessarily understand all the nuance. So is it more concerning for a team if an offensive guard is too high in his stance versus a tackle? Because I would think as a non-offensive line guy, a tackle tends to have a little bit more time to lower his position and kind of reset himself versus an offensive guard where it's a split second, the ball snaps and somebody's in your face already. Is that correct?
Yeah, for tackles, it's more about center of gravity, and it's about the lower half and really having a back that's still upright some. So you kind of don't concern yourself too much about a tackle who's a little bit high, though you don't want to be high. But out of the two, if you're comparing, you definitely need a guard to stay a bit lower because the interior line is right on you. And you got to win that game of who punches first. Sometimes you don't punch first. Sometimes your punch may not land. That interior defensive tackle might beat you there. But if you have the leverage where you're staying low, the low man often wins. And then it's all about the hand placement. That's why some of these guys who, if they're striking and it's not quite where they want, offensive line coaches are now even teaching it's not all about getting the breastplate and pushing that breastplate up right below the numbers. Some are actually even teaching a technique where you can come to the outside a little bit, not all the way out where you're holding, but it's just trying to manipulate to teach them if you can't strike and you can't land it, where else can you be comfortable to grab cloth and not get that holding penalty? So that's why you see guys like Torrance, for example. He struggles a little bit in that category, even though he has the strength and the size. The thing about Skoronski, I think he excels a little bit in that category, and especially if you were to move him inside where I think it masks some of his concerns there on the outside. DeJuan Jones, man, just grip strength, like vice grips. If his hands are on you, it's like you're done. He's a bouncer in a nightclub. He's the big 6'7", 6'8" dude. They're just like, oh, come on, you gotta go. This ain't it. This ain't your night. And so
he's comically big too. Like the entire offensive line. When you're talking about an offensive line like Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, some of these schools that are Wisconsin that are notorious for just having these big body dudes. He towers over Paris Johnson. Towers over him. It's crazy. And Paris Johnson's a big dude. Like he's just absolutely massive. And when he kind of popped on my radar, obviously as a Georgia fan, go Dogs when we upset them on New Year's Eve. But not really upset. We beat them on New Year's Eve when they had to come back from behind. Just had to bring that up real quick. Broderick Jones didn't lose that game. Just throwing that out there. But back to DeJuan Jones. When I'm watching him, the first guy that popped in my mind is Daniel Falele, whatever his name is, Falele, the giant offensive tackle from Minnesota last year. I think he was 6'8", 390 or something like that. So my first concern is he too big, right? Like sometimes you think like size is great, but it also can be too big, or you start having those concerns on, is this going to be a guy that, you have camp issues. I'm showing up at 400 pounds to camp every year. Is that who he is? And from what I've gathered from DeJuan Jones, and let me know if I'm wrong, is although he's a huge person, he's kind of always been a huge person and handles his frame really well. He's not one of those guys that came into college at 275 and put on 100 pounds. Like he's just a big dude. He's actually a two-sport athlete too, and was a really good basketball player too. So when I started hearing that stuff, and then I go back to the film and watch it, I'm like, I get it. Like we don't necessarily need a right tackle, but if he's on the board, I mean, I definitely get that pick. I did want to mention a few names real quick because we had a lot of offensive tackles that made our combined list. Because as you mentioned, in the chat mentioned as well, Cody was not on everybody's list as a tackle. He's on some people's list as an interior offensive lineman because he could play guard or center. So with that said, there were other names mentioned. So I want to bring them up real quickly. And if you guys want to talk about them, great. If not, I just want to get them out there because they were honorable mentions. But we had Asim Richards from North Carolina, Tyler Steen, who I think's coming on a lot of people's radar recently from Alabama. I know Dom mentioned his grip strength is something he's interested in.
Yeah, strong
Connor
hands.
Galvin, strong hands. Yeah, Connor Galvin from Baylor, Wanya Morris from Oklahoma, and the last one is Carter Warren from Pittsburgh, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So those are the guys that were just off the list. The final guy on our scoreboard was Blake Freeland, and he had 3 votes, and so all of those were 9th or 10th place. 2 people didn't have him at all, and the rest of those guys were like 2 and 1, so they were right there. Not a huge difference between them, but I just want to mention them because offensive tackle in particular is a position where you're not going to get 10 guys drafted. You're going to get 26 guys drafted. So if you're in the top 15 or 16, you're definitely worth mentioning. So just want to highlight them real quick.
Yeah, and to go back on DeJuan, you got to consider, you have to also go back.
Never mind those guys. We're going back to DeJuan. I like it.
Yeah, you got to go back to like previous year's tape whenever you evaluate these kids. So if you look at DeJuan Jones in 2021, you have a completely different player than in 2022. Because last year or the year before in 21, Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan, kind of ate his lunch. Then you got a guy like Boye Mafe from Minnesota, who also went pretty high in the draft in 2021, worked him, did a little speed to power and just trucked him. But you see the development just in that year where it's like, man, that's a night and day difference.
Right.
So you definitely worked on your game. You saw a little bit more athleticism out of him. So that's why I think he still is an ascending player. The one guy that I ended up putting on the list, Aleem Richards from North Carolina. He's a left tackle, and I think he's a traits guy that I would love to bring in. He probably won't go until maybe the 4th, 5th round, but I think he's like 6'5", 304. He has the length that we covet. He has all of the movement skills. If you watch him against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has a defensive end that many people like. The name is escaping me.
Isaiah Foskey.
Yeah, Foskey. Foskey in 21. If he would have left probably high 2nd round, low 1st round, his 22 tape wasn't that great. But, man, Richards worked Notre Dame's defensive ends all game long. And he just put together a pretty solid season, and he's a 3-year starter, I believe. And we know the kind of offensive firepower that North Carolina has had the last few years with all their receivers, and you got a few running backs. Next year, they might have the number 1 quarterback in all of the draft. But a guy like him kind of gets lost in the sauce. But I think he did a pretty solid job for the Tar Heels. So he reminds me a little bit more of a solid frame than a Jalen Duncan, the Maryland guy who made our list. So tools, traits guy that you bring him in. I like him better than Ball. I actually like him better than Let's Go.
So there was a question in the chat. Want to bring it up real quick because I thought it was a good question. I'm going to ask it and pull up. Actually, let me pull up the graphic first just so you guys can see it. All right, cool. There it is. So our guy Swain, where's it at? Here it is. He wants to know, Dom and Nix, are these top 10 players plug and play? And if so, or if not, who is on this list in your opinion?
Are we talking about for like the NFL in general? Or are we talking about for the Cowboys? It would be the indifference of that question to me, Dom.
Why don't you answer it both ways? Why don't you say, Nick's, like these players could be plug and play for the Cowboys, or maybe like 3 would be plug and play for the Cowboys. Those are these guys, and 6 overall, or whatever. Like,
got you. Yeah. So I mean, if we're going with the Constitution, and this is kind of where I'm at, right? I don't think if we're buying into Steele and we're buying into Tyler Smith as your tackles, the only plug and play guys are guys that go to the inside, which this draft has those guys. So we're talking about Peter out the gate there. He can go inside. Cody Mock down there as well. I mean, Dom, you've gushed about him all night long, and you've talked me into the idea of right tackle, put him inside as well too, right, with right and everything. So the guys that translate to guard here are the ones that we plug and play day one. Now, if we get into the idea that Steele's not going to be ready, right? Or, maybe we get that 2nd round pick, right? He's on the restricted side of things, and maybe he gets time to get out of here. Now that list expands. But with the idea that it's going to be Steele and Tyler Smith there, I would say 4. I got 4 plug and play guys, and talking about putting in there at the left guard position, Dom.
Yeah, it is about landing spot, team needs. But I think it's pretty easy that the top 4 guys would be plug and play. Now, Jalen Duncan, I truly think he needs a year's worth of development. Cody Mock, I think he's going to have some time just to adjust to the speed and the power of the NFL. He's a guy who went into North Dakota State weighing 220 pounds and was a former tight end, and he's gotten up to 304 pounds and really got to the 275-pound mark after 1 year. So he's been working his way up. I think that frame of his is pretty maxed out. He's a longer torso kind of guy, but that helps him be able to move. So he's pretty athletic. That's why I think teams would rather move him inside to center to utilize all that athleticism. So it's going to take him time to adjust. Freeland is a guy that might end up surprising people where he could play during year one, but I think it would behoove him to add on a little bit of strength. And Anton Harrison, he's the hard one for me because I think he's a high ceiling guy and could potentially come in. But to me, the top four, you definitely start those guys from day one because they're all going to be first rounders. And we know teams like to go ahead and throw their offensive linemen who are highly touted and highly drafted into the starting lineup.
And our guy Spoon, finally in the building. Spoonie, how we doing this Friday, brother?
Excuse me. Hey, I'm hanging in there.
10-4.
Crazy night, but I'm here. Talking some Cowboy football. I'm here.
Sweet. Well, I'll tell you what, as we're wrapping up the offensive tackles here, and we got the top 10 list up before we get into the mock draft, you want to touch on any of these guys, and I'll let you get the final word here on these tackles before we pivot out and get into the mock draft.
Yeah, well, listen, my favorite guy out of these tackles is DeJuan Jones. Ain't that the one called Thanos?
Yeah,
what it is? Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want on the squad. If we're gonna go on becoming a power running team, as some people say, I understand we got our tackle situation with Steele, but he still has to get healthy. We don't know how he's gonna respond. We saw what happened with Michael Gallup. But I still, in my opinion, I would love for DeJuan Jones to be on this team, in my opinion. So, again, he's a big guy. He's about 6'8", 3 and change. I mean, he still needs to be better with his footwork, but it's coachable, it's teachable, in my opinion. But in my opinion, he would fit very well on this offensive line.
10-4. 10-4, sir. All right. Well, that's going to conclude the top 10 Pick Six Sports top 10 offensive tackles. Some of these guys may play a little bit of guard, some different things in general, but they are there. And we got Spoon here right on the nick of time for a little mock draft action, guys. Time for the 6th iteration here. And they've thrown some curveballs here now, guys. They got some curveballs up here now. We got public versus PFF board. We got care for positional value, draft for needs, randomness, and your speed instead of fast. We got turbo even. I mean, stepping the game up. The one thing they haven't done for the Cowboys is they still have that pick 175 up there for us. So
we can force the trade. Let's do that before the draft. We can actually go in and force that trade just so that it's off the board. We have Gilmore.
Okay. All right. Where do I go to force a trade here now?
I
think I got to enter the draft, but
you have to enter the draft first, and then before start.
Yeah. And now I can get a trade up here. So it's going to trade with the Colts.
Yep.
Indy.
So hopefully this time PFF doesn't mess us up 3 rounds into the
draft.
draft.
My God. Yeah, that was... Colts. Okay, so we're trading 175, and we're taking cornerback. It feels good doing this. Now this has already happened. Boom. 175 for Gilmore's. Will this trade be accepted? What do y'all think? It's a 0. I'm going to hit offer trade to see what it says real quick. Nah, I'm just going to hit the force. I'm not going to play the game. Force it. Boom. There it is. Trade's accepted. So we got that again.
Man, and as you're doing this, I really want Bergeron in the 2nd round.
Okay.
Oh, I want Matthew Bergeron. I can't get off this O-line stuff.
Okay.
So can I ask you guys, Aaron asked me to bring this up. I mentioned it. Actually, I think I tweeted it out. I'm pretty sure I did. But I mentioned this to you guys kind of individually too. So with Bobby Belt's report, and we won't go super long on this. I just want to ask you, with Bobby Belt's report that the Cowboys are looking to get a deal with a trade. They don't mind giving up a high pick. They don't mind paying a player, but they don't want to do both. Would you guys consider depending on what it costs for Cooks or Hopkins or what OBJ is asking for. Would you guys consider trading up in this draft to say 20 to 22, something like that, to get the best receiver available, hypothetically, if that guy's still there? Would you do that?
For me, if it's JSN, yes, all the way.
Yeah, I think if it's not mission complete here before the draft, I think you have to think about that, and they would have to lay out some things that we talked about, what position they need to add here, moving forward before the draft. But yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, going into this thing, they have to get offensive weapons, and if they don't accomplish that goal prior to the draft, then they have to be willing to roll the dice if they didn't send that second or third round pick to go get D-Hop, to go up that board and get a guy. JSN, I'm right there with Spoon. JSN will be my guy. But I mean, I'm not scared to go get Zay Flowers either.
All right.
What about you, Dom?
So I don't think I would move up, because a move up that high would represent also packaging the third round pick.
Right.
And
But the reason I'm asking that specifically is, in theory, if you get Hopkins, you're looking at a second or a third. And if you get Cooks, you're looking at a third or fourth. So in this event, you're still losing that pick. You're just getting your wide receiver for a lot cheaper. So basically, at this point, you're just weighing, would it make sense for the Cowboys, or you, if you were in the Cowboys, to give up that pick either way, but have a guy at a cheap deal, versus give up the pick, have a proven guy, but at a higher cost. So that's kind of where the cost evaluation comes in.
Yeah, I don't think I would move up for JSN at this moment. And the main reason is CeeDee Lamb has done his best work in the slot as a pro. And I really want him to continue to stay in the slot, move him around, pre-snap, whatever it may be. And to me, Jackson Smith and Jigba's best value is in the interior. So he'd have to be one of those. Look out to get him at 26.
All right, so we're not going to do that in this draft, but I wanted to put it out there.
What about you,
I would, because if I'm, again, and I just kind of walked out why I would do that. If I'm giving up a third round pick either way, obviously there's the proven element of a player, but when you go for a proven player, you're also getting a proven cost. So I would rather risk the third round pick in this situation to move from 26 to 21 or something like that. To get a JSN or Quinn Johnson or whoever's number one on their board. For me, it'd be JSN. And I think he's a guy that could immediately come in and contribute. So I would personally do it, but I can also understand the wait and see and hope somebody falls to you, because there's 4 wide receivers I have a first round grade on. And if any of the 4 fell to 26, I'd be happy. So I don't necessarily have to go do that. But if a guy's within striking distance and he's number 1 on my board, I would definitely consider it. I do want to throw this out there. We'll talk about this another time, but just think about this. When cornerback first came out, and it happened quick, Cowboys are trading for a cornerback. The names that were mentioned, Gilmore was not one of those guys. I'm just throwing it out there. There's possibilities that there's other wide receivers that we're not thinking about that may be somebody that's on the trade block. Maybe it's a Deontay Johnson or somebody like that from the Steelers. And that's just throwing a quick name. There may be several players we're not considering that could be out in that realm. So we'll talk about that later. But let's go. So we're not trading up in this mock.
Okie dokie. Let's ride. Starting the draft.
Man,
okay. I told you that turbo hits different.
Oh, Nolan's gone. Deontay
and Nolan and Osiris Torrance right there in front of us. Zay Flowers as well. Cansey out of here. Porter Jr. out of here. Branch Addison to the that's interesting. Addison going to Pittsburgh, right? Van Ness, Jigbug to Green Bay. Look at the round of tackles right there. Peter, Paris, Broderick, Murphy going in 11. QJ going to the Eagles. Witherspoon, Gonzalez, back-to-back corners here for the Falcons and Bears. Will Levis to the Raiders. Wilson to the Lions. Carter to the Seahawks. And boy, Don with a big smile with Anthony Richardson getting to the Colts. Will Anderson to the Cards. Stroud going number 2 to the Texans. And then number 1 there, Bryce Young to the Panthers. So, guys, there's Bijan.
Yeah.
Sony's made his decision already. So Dom, I want to ask you, since we just talked OT, Harrison. Would Harrison immediately start over Smith or Steele, or is Harrison good enough to move Smith inside? Tyler, that is. If he's not, then I think he's out. But if he is, then maybe he's worth talking about.
Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. 26 is just a bit too high. I think he's more of a 35 to 40 range type guy. So you're talking about a third round value. It's almost like trading away the first and the third to get a guy that's, at his range where I would be comfortable. So that's a lot of value to give up to go that high. DeJuan Jones, on the other hand, depending on what's happening with Steele, I would definitely take DeJuan Jones here.
Okay. Wide receiver wise, if you want to take a look here, it's Josh Downs, Tank Dell, Michael Wilson, A.T. Perry, Jalen White, White
for a first round value.
Yeah, Josh Downs is maybe going to look good. I don't know. Linebacker. I mean, the names are there. Probably still a little early for them. Let's look at.
So Nix, I just want to ask real quick, since Drew Sanders there. I know that he's a guy that you like, and quite a few people do. It seems like, whatever reason, he's kind of dropping in the mock drafts, not just on PFF and a lot of people's boards, where it seems like he's settled back into the second round. And we saw that with Jalen Hyatt too. Like, he was flying up boards, and now he's kind of level setting. Is Drew Sanders in the 26 equation anymore, or do you think probably not anymore?
I think he probably hurt himself at the combine, not running and stuff. Now his pro day might change some of that for him, but right now I have him probably playing at the second. There's a point in time I'd have him at 26, but he's firmly down the board now for me. Just again, didn't work out. We got to see how these meetings go. Now once again the pro days happen and whatnot, he can come back up the board. But for right now, I think in the second round is where I have him.
Are we trading or no trades?
We got 2 votes for trade backs, and then we also have a vote to take one of these 3.
We got Steve Avila. Steve Avila's there.
I feel like that's a reach. For me, it's a reach.
Yeah, a little slight reach.
Let me ask you guys this too, because this is a very real conversation for teams at this point, especially when you're late in the draft. With what's on the board, how many first round grades from what you've seen are still on the board? Because if none of them are first round grades, then trade back is absolutely within consideration, especially this late in the draft.
I think
Bijan to me is a first round grade still. So he's somebody that I don't want running back at round 1, but especially late in round 1. I would definitely consider that. I don't have Mozzie as a first round grade, but he's a good player, and I think the Cowboys and other teams may. For me, I think he's more of like a 40 to 50 type of guy. But I understand the need
Brian
there.
So not moving you?
I don't have a first round grade on him. So for me, the guys that are still on the board, I'll just tell you guys real quick, is Harrison, Bijan Robinson, Cam Smith. So I have 3 guys left on the board that I have a first round grade on.
I mean, if we go with Cam Smith, he's a future guy. Remember, Stephon Gilmore is a 1-year rental, so that's a possibility right there. We know Bijan's situation with this team if we do get him, and if it's not those 2 guys, I'd rather trade back. That's just me.
So I actually see quite a few first rounders here. Bijan Robinson, of course. I think Michael Mayer, he's a first rounder, but I just wouldn't go tight end. Darnell Wright is still on the board. To me, he's the best value and probably second right behind Bijan as the best overall talent still left. Gibbs, he's kind of a cheater. 1-2 to steal from Dame Brugler as far as cheater grade. But I know which guy I would choose.
Which guy would you choose?
To me, if you continue to solidify the trenches, and I just did a whole exercise about how offensive line is so important, it impacts the running back, it impacts the quarterback, it helps unlock the receivers that we're hoping that we're trying to bring to the team and the current ones that we have. But I want Dak as healthy as he can be, as comfortable as he can be, and confident that the guys in front of him are going to protect him. And by adding a Darnell Wright, it gives you even more depth in the trenches. And then you can kind of interchange if you need in case there's an emergency situation. So Darnell Wright is the best value and one of the best players. It just all makes sense at 26.
Yeah, I think for me at this point, it would be Bijan or a trade back. Is where I would be at.
What are our trade back options just before we?
Okay. Yeah, that's I think you have to get playmakers here. We've done enough investing in the offensive line. And look, and I get it, running back in the first round, but the way this board fell, we got to get a playmaker, and then I have to start factoring in the fact the Cowboys have Pollard on a tag. I don't know if they're going to get a deal done with him because of where the tag sits at. This could be very much a Dalton Schultz situation where he's going to be a one and done, and then when you look around in the room, and then I can have Bijan for 5 years on a relatively cheap deal, and then figure it out between that time span and move on. But as far as the trades go, we got 4. We got Kansas City at 31.
What does Kansas City pick? 31 and
31.
Would you do 31 and 95? Would they? I don't know if they would do that. Probably 31 and 123 is what you're looking at realistically on the trade value.
And then who else do we have here? Pittsburgh at 32, Dolphins at 52, Jacksonville at 56. So we're looking at probably Pittsburgh or Kansas City. Pittsburgh's 32, 49, 80. Kansas City is, what's that? 31, 63, 95. So
y'all want to risk it? Go to 31?
I mean, if they would take 31 and 90, if they would give us 31 and 95, I would absolutely do that. And it looks like, let's get more then.
Oh, yeah, hold on. Well, then we'll give you 63.
So let's give them, would you guys get 31 and 63 for 26 and 129?
Yeah,
maybe?
I'm with you.
Taking 129.
If we are trying to be as realistic.
How about 90, BJ?
I think it's 90. You're probably looking at 90. Right, Dom?
Yeah.
Boom.
If we wouldn't even need to do that. Realistically, if they want to move up to our 26 pick, that's about 100 points in value. Their pick, 95 is worth 120. So you could probably force them to give up that little bit of a 20-point value, which is kind of like a late.
I mean, they'll give us 95. We're trying to do.
It's like a fifth. So
yeah.
We're giving, and it's still a first round. We still have the 5th year option. So, yeah, I'm good with that. Chat, let us know. You guys want to take Bijan, Mozzie, or do you want to trade back?
Now here's my.
Or Darnell Wright.
So BJ, you wouldn't do the 31 and the 63 that we will get from Kansas City for our 26 and 90?
I was trying to get to that next.
Yeah,
like I said, we can trade
another 5th round pick. We gain 2 seconds, right?
Right. I mean, we could trade 26 directly for 31 and 95.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
And 123 if you want to, probably. But if you want to get 31 and 63, you could give up 26 and 90 and get 21 and 63 and maybe 123.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'd be more interested in that.
Yeah, I'll risk it. I mean, BJ, you're Jerry, Matt, you're Stephen Jones.
I mean, I'm taking 3 top 63 players this way.
I'm in the corner somewhere, the security. So what we doing in the war room? I'd rather do this right here. I'll do this.
Okay. 31, 63, and 123 for 26 and 90. Let's see.
So we got multiple votes to trade back, so I think we should do it.
All right, let's see.
Y'all just gonna have to hold me back, like Steven had to hold back Jerry from getting Johnny football because I'm like, Darnell Wright, get him now.
Okay, well, here's the thing.
Except
we got the trade.
Nice.
We'll resume. Who did they take? Who did they take? They took Bijan. They traded up, which you kind of figured they were going to take.
Drew Sanders, I'm glad I asked you that question. Very timely, because he did go way earlier than what they had.
He did.
I would get Gibbs, bro. What's Gibbs at?
Oh. What? No, get out of here. What's going on here? Well, I'm trying to get off his
So the top tight end for a lot of people is still available. So tight end 1's on the board. A lot of people's top 2 or 3 tackles are all still available.
Dom,
Not top 2 or 3, but top 5 tackles.
You guys still there?
So Dom, let me ask you: Jones, Bergeron, and Wright, all 3 are there in still round 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's Wright for you, right? He was number 1 in your top 10. Okay, so Dom's weighing in for Wright there. What about you guys, Nick, Spoonie? What are you guys seeing?
I mean,
I'm liking DeJuan Jones from Ohio State.
See, now I can take Josh Johnson and feel good about it. I could go Mayer here. See, now I'm
Would
at
you
31.
risk it though, knowing you have 58 and 63? So you have 2 picks coming up pretty soon, or
I
feel like a wide receiver is going to be there. I don't think any of the top offensive tackles are there. Will McDonald's interesting too.
You think Mayer's going to be there?
No, I don't.
Okay.
What about, so Rohit wants to ask, we know DeJuan Jones is there. Is Mozzie still available? And if so, is this the spot you feel comfortable taking Mozzie?
Mozzie is on the board still.
Man, yo,
And
telling you, man, Mozzie, that's an end of the second round value for me.
but there's more tackles on the board than these topper end defensive alignment. But let's roll with it. Who y'all want? The offensive tackle, who you want?
There's 2 people you could kind of, I'd be all right with if Gibbs is still there, because I think he can help weaponize the offense. So adding that talent would be tremendous. And then Cam Smith, I think I saw his name still there. I know we just got Stephon Gilmore. That's a 1-year thing. Diggs is still on the team doing his thing. But it's almost like you just flood the mess out of that DB room, especially with cornerbacks, to kind of make sure that it's now just locked and loaded for years to come. So I could see why Cam Smith would make some sense here for us.
Well, but here's my thing. This was the top 10 tackles edition. Who's the tackle we're taking? We traded back. Who's the tackle, guys?
We got one for Wright and one for Jones.
Knicks.
Sign me up for Wright. Oh,
can Wright play left tackle, Dom? I'm not saying I'm going to, but if I need him to, could he play left tackle? Because DeJuan Jones, I'm pretty sure, is right tackle only.
Yeah.
Could Wright play left tackle?
Wright has played left tackle for a number of games back in his earlier part of his career.
How did he look?
He was all right. I mean, at the time, you wouldn't have thought that he could have ascended into a potential first rounder like he has at the right side. He's much, much better on the right side. But in an emergency situation, left.
Who's the better left guard?
Oh, there's no way you putting DeJuan Jones on the inside.
So should we look at guard though? Because Steve Avila is
on the board.
He's on the board, and John Michael Schmitz is still available too, I think. And I feel like either of those could immediately be guard 1 for the Dallas Cowboys.
I mean, I would take Avila here for sure.
As much as
that's my concern with tackle is if I take a tackle, I'm moving Tyler Smith inside, or this guy's not starting immediately unless Terrence Steele's injured. So I think I would rather take a guard here over a tackle.
Question:
Could you guys buy on that or no?
It's just a reach.
Would you trade back, Professor? At least one or two spots.
We're picking here.
You're picking?
We got to pick now.
No, we're picking here.
Not picking
again. Then we're back to if we go back to value now. Now we're talking about the edge McDonald. We're talking about Mayer here, Downs, Jones. I mean, I could definitely see the Cowboys taking Mozzie Smith here. They like him. It makes a ton of sense. We need one tech. We don't have a one tech in the building. Cam Smith is cool, but I can get a cornerback a little bit later. I understand flooding the block here a little bit, but the way the team is currently constituted right now, there's just more things, that you have to get at. I mean, I'd probably more into Henley right now than Smith for where we're at with linebacker and corner.
All right, I'll give you guys the real quick, and you guys can vote. So I mentioned it 3 or 4 episodes ago. I have a priority list on positions that no matter what's on the board, I always prioritize them. And offensive tackle was in that equation. Guard was not. Doesn't mean you can't take a guard over a tackle if the guard's a better player, but I think the tackles are a better player than the guard, so I'm not taking Steve Avila here, even though I like him. So for me, I'll go with you guys. DeJuan Jones or Darnell Wright, I'm cool with either one. Mozzie, same thing, defensive tackle. I'm not Rod Marinelli, but I just don't prioritize one tech over offensive tackles. So for me, I'm going with what I think is the higher player on my board. So I would take DeJuan Jones and then Darnell Wright in that order, but I'm cool with whatever you guys take. Offensive tackle for me.
Okay, who's the better right tackle, Dom?
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright. Yeah, so we have two. So we have two Jones, right? Because Spoonie and Eddie, or Spoonie and O went Jones. Me and Dom are on Darnell Wright. What does the chat say? And that's where we'll roll.
Oh, chat.
What's the chat? Is it Jones or Wright here?
I see two Wrights, Eddie O and our guy Crispy Bacon. Shout out Crispy Bacon. Great name. Both picked Darnell Wright so far.
The best name.
So we'll go for, let's see if we get two more votes for Darnell Wright, and we'll lock it in.
And see, what's so great about this?
Rohit's on DeJuan Jones, and now we're kind of evening it back out.
What's so great about this is somehow if Steele is not available, whether he's injured or still coming back from his injury, or maybe a team poaches him from the tender that we placed on him, we'll get a second rounder if that happens.
Big facts.
So, man, think you could get DeJuan Jones or Wright and then go around and get Avila still in a second? My God.
So we're pretty mixed. Let's just pick, because the chat, we have a lot of Wrights, and I feel like it's slightly more Wright than Jones, but it's pretty close. So let's just pick. I'll go with Wright. I'll lock it in.
Go.
Is that what we got?
All right, so let's just go and take Avila now. Go take Avila at 58 now and move on with our life and be done with this line.
Yep.
Nope. Nope.
Oh wow, he's right there.
Absolutely not. I gave you guys your offensive lineman.
Yeah, we're taking Avila now. Let's do it.
No.
Let's load up.
No Steele.
What's our wide receiver, defensive tackle, linebackers looking like? And corner, I guess, but really those
Tank
three
Dell,
positions.
Stevenson, Garrett Williams, Laporta, Tibin. Oh man, I am
not liking this trade back now.
I think Gibbs is. I think A Train's here. McBride, Charbonnet.
How about Donnell Washington, tight end?
Tight end. No, you got Laporta and Kraft, Shoemaker, Kuntz, Allen. Let's check linebacker. Dorian Williams, Overshawn, Pace, Cam Jones.
All right, Steve Avila is my vote.
Actually,
is JSN available? Because he gives you center and guard flex. Is he still on the board? Maybe I think I'd go that route.
Nope.
Jose he's gone. Cool. All right, I'm Avila. I'm good. Locking in. Whatever.
All right.
Double get the offensive line.
All right.
We do offensive line.
Wow.
Is it Tank Dell time?
Wow.
You guys got to work with me now. I need something. I gave you guys 2 offensive linemen in a row.
Marvin Wilson, Tank Dell, A.T. Perry.
I'm sitting out.
You sitting out? Why you sitting out?
I'm in heaven.
Oh yeah.
This is the A+ draft.
How about Laporta?
Got some chat love for Laporta.
Yeah.
We
Get some Tank Dell love.
Cornerback.
Tank Dell, Charbonnet, A-Chain. I mean,
They met with
I'd
A-Chain.
probably say here at this point, I'm either. Hold on, let me look at wide receiver.
I'm telling y'all now, Laporta's going to end up having the best NFL.
I like
career.
Laporta a lot. Yeah, I like Laporta a lot, man. I'm huge on Laporta. But I'd be Tank Dell or Laporta here. Is where I'm at.
I'm Tank Dell here. So we got a half vote. We have 1.5 votes now for Tank Dell.
All right, Spoonie.
So y'all waited on me. I'm the final vote.
Yes.
What you're telling me? I'm the final vote. Well,
Yeah.
I'm going with Tank.
It's time!
All right, Tank Dell. It is University of Houston.
So it's funny. We went with like 680 pounds or something of humans, and then went with like 155 pounds of humans.
If there's a
I
God,
think he's like
for-
168, but yeah.
So look, we could have waited and got Marvin Wilson. If there's a
Michael-
God,
Michael Wilson.
there's a God.
He's
if
a
there's
hurt
a
guy.
God, there's not a God. It's Shoemaker.
Luke makes sense though. Like he feels like somebody the Cowboys would take. And so far, we've been super active on defense. Haven't helped the offense at all. This draft is very much a, hey, we got you, Dak. We got you a receiver, 2 offensive linemen. We put resources there for you.
Is it running back time here at 123? Can I talk you into Deuce Vaughn?
So we have 123 and 129 too. So that's something because we got that added pick.
Can I twist? I know McBride's here. I'm just throwing it out there. What are we thinking?
Well,
Getting some
I will
running
say
back
this
love.
as y'all pick it. Since 2014, we've had 17 what we would call premium picks, and for me, that's first and second rounders. Out of the 17 premium picks, we've used 12 of those on defense, and only 4 of those guys are still on the team. So there has to be a time where we kind of see the shift where they use some premium a little bit more on the offensive side, because this team has overturned drastically, and they've used so many even later round picks 3 through 7 on defense. I mean, I even did the math on that. It's like only 37% of their later round picks has been on offense. So there's just been a huge imbalance in drafts where they've used it on the defensive side of the ball because they had to. Now it's a little bit of shifting of the guard because we have a solid defense, and we need some more offensive firepower. And even our linemen are getting old. Zach Martin's going to be gone in 2 years probably. Tyron, this is maybe his last year. And Biotish, if he plays again another season like he did this past one, he might price himself out of what we're willing to pay. So the fact that we got Avila, he's got the versatility to be a center. He's played center before. We got Darnell Wright. He can be your left tackle, right tackle, whatever you may need out of him. So we're doing well still.
All right,
Would
so
you consider-
I have something in mind right now. I'm kind of cooking over here on the back end internally, and I want to talk to you guys as a group. So I see 2 names right now. We went 3 straight offensive picks. And you could definitely go running back here, but I like how deep we are at running back still. Although I love Dwayne McBride so much right here, I think he'd be the perfect complementary back with Tony Pollard. But I know Dorian Williams is on the board, but I'm looking at Jacorian Bennett at cornerback, but then double dipping at 129 on defense and taking Gerard Clark. I'm getting you that massive one tech to help in rotation, and I'm getting you a cornerback that can immediately come in and help outside, inside, wherever. And I know we don't need that right now, but I'm looking at the value. He's one of the fastest defensive backs in the class. He's a good tackler. He can help him run support. He has a lot of Deron Bland type of traits. And we know that next year we're going to have maybe Gilmore gone, definitely Jordan Lewis gone. So you're going to have a need there. And I think he's a really good value right now. So for me, Jacorian Bennett, and then following up 6 picks later with Gerard Clark, I think would be really good on defense. That's where I'm at. I like the running back room still.
Yeah, I agree.
Running back room's going to dry up though, but
I agree.
I like Dorian as well. But I'm okay with taking Bennett. I like Bennett, so I'm good with taking Bennett here. But boy, Dorian Williams staring at you, kind of hard to pass up here as well for me. Could I dare talk into Dorian Williams and then Bennett and see how it plays out, or
what are we looking at defensive tackle like in terms of one text? Like who's still on the board?
I mean, you have Coburn from UT. He's still on the board, and I would have him as a higher value than Clark, probably by a good half round higher.
Yeah,
I mean, we're
Coburn.
pretty wiped at one tech. There's not a lot after.
Yeah, there's not.
Roderick Martin's interesting. I actually like him.
So
what? I've spoke my piece. You guys sell me. We're all in a boardroom together. War room. Who are you guys picking?
Nah,
See, The guy that I like the most out of all these would be Bennett. Next to him would be the edge from Missouri.
Good point.
And Isaiah McGuire. McGuire reminds me of Sam Williams 2.0. And so I could have Micah, I can have Sam, who's going to be ascending this year, and you think he's going to have a bigger role for the team. You have Dorrance Armstrong, but who's going to be that fourth guy?
Right.
They're not bringing in Fowler back. I think you can work in a rookie like McGuire, who's just a stout guy. He's a good run defender. He's kind of the hybrid between Tank and Sam Williams. So I like him a lot. But Jacorian Bennett would be the pick here for me for the same reasons I said Cam Smith in that first round. Flood cornerback.
So Isaiah McGuire, for people that don't know, Missouri Tiger, 6'4", 275, 7 sacks last year, 21 hurries. The year before, 6 sacks, 23 hurries. So he's been pretty consistent. Had elite grades in pass rush, run defense, pass rush win rate, true pass set, pass rush grade, and run stop grade. So across the board, he had elite grades.
And, Georgia.
Not really elite, but high end.
To me, I think the team that played Georgia the best were the Missouri Tigers. Missouri probably should have won that game. At one point, I think they were up 19-3 or 16-3. Can't remember. But from the beginning, the very first play of the game, if you watch him, McGuire just does a little inside-out move, or outside-in move, where he just got cleaned by Broderick Jones, who we're talking about is going to probably be a top 20 pick in this draft. And Jones had a little bit of issues with his power and length. So he's just, uber talented.
I'm going to change my opinion. We'll take Jacorian Bennett out of the equation for me, although I love him. I'm standing on the table pounding. I want Gerard Clark at 123 or 129. You guys figure out how that works. I want him at one of those two picks. If we take McGuire, running back,
let's go. I want McGuire here. Dom's talking me into McGuire. Let's do McGuire and Clark. I'm good with that.
Rohit wants McGuire too, so we got the chat going with it.
Yeah, let's go McGuire.
Wow, I'm surprised folks in the chat know McGuire. No offense.
Rohit's smart, man. Rohit's a draft guy. He scouts a lot of players.
Yeah, man. McGuire's a dude.
Let's do it. We've already double dipped at the offensive line. Let's double dip in defensive line. Let's secure these trenches. Are you okay, Spoon? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm cool. I'm cool with it. I did like the move that the professor said earlier about getting the cornerback. The value there.
Yeah.
It was only here 1 year.
I mean,
no, I changed my mind. I want McBride now. Forget what I said. I want McBride.
McBride's here. Dorian Williams is here.
No, I'm taking
Deuce
McBride.
Vaughn is still here. Bennett's still here.
What pick is this for us? Pick 4?
129.
Guys, our former head coach said Clark, McGuire. We already took McGuire. I originally wanted Clark, but now I'm kind of having reservations. I want now that I see the board, I'm going with locked in. You guys make your picks.
Dorian Williams at this point makes a lot of sense, and I'm really not as high on him as many people are. McBride, I'm extremely high on McBride. I think that's like a late 3 type value. Oh, Bennett's still there.
Bennett's still here.
Yes.
Bennett's still here, and of course, Colburn's still on the board as well.
This is actually a good spot to trade back, but we already traded back, so I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
But this would be a great
Clark
spot for
is
the
here.
Cowboys to trade back a few spots if they could.
All right, there are many more running backs that I like.
Nope.
That are still on
Locked
the
in.
board.
McBride.
But
I want
McBride. Deuce Vaughn, McBride, Keaton Mitchell, Eric Gray, Chase Brown. I love Israel from Pitt.
Yeah, that's my
He has a lot to his game that I like. McIntosh,
McBride or Bennett, and I'll let y'all have either one.
I can't take y'all in. I can't get that Deuce Vaughn. I can't get that weapon. Okay.
I love Deuce Vaughn. I love him, but we have Tony Pollard. If Tony Pollard walked in free agency, it's a completely different story. But now, looking at what we have in the room,
I believe in Malik Davis, damn it.
I mean, Okay, so let's talk about the numbers real quick. Let me sell you guys on Dwayne McBride. McBride over the last 2 years has rushed for over 3,000 yards. The lowest average in his career was 6.7 yards per carry. He's ran for 33 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. Ridiculous. He broke 76 tackles last year. The only running back over his college career, the only running backs who have broken more tackles than him since 2014, Bijan Robinson and Javonte Williams, who I loved. This dude is the guy that if you need 3 yards, he'll get you 5 or 6. If you need a short yardage touchdown, he'll get you that. If you need, he would be the perfect person to pair with Tony Pollard.
Yeah. Here's the problem, though, is, and this is kind of where we're at with the gun against the head, because you got McBride, but whoever you take, you're going to lose here because the next pick's 162. So you go McBride, rolling the dice. There's no way we're getting Bennett, right?
Can we pause and trade up?
Yeah, no, we can't trade. Oh,
we haven't taken wide receiver either, so we really needed to sign OBJ or do something in free agency because we haven't even touched wide receiver.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. We took Taylor, remember?
Oh, my bad. I'm tripping. Steven said wide out target. I'm thinking, did I get overvoted because okay, cool. Just kidding. Forget that. We're good at wide receiver.
Yeah, we're good.
You guys
roll the dice. Let's just roll the dice. Let's go. Look, you got to get the guy. We passed on Bijan. And look, as much as I'd love to get some of these other guys, look, I like Izzy out of Pitt, and I could roll the dice, but are y'all not big on Izzy out of Pitt or no? Have y'all looked at him?
But McBride to me is
just that much better for you.
A round and a half higher.
Okay,
I'll tell you too, real quick, the difference between the two. So Izzy is fun to watch. He just doesn't have a lot of power to his game. Like he reminds me too much of a Tony Pollard. Or
he reminds me of Aaron Jones a little bit.
I just feel like Aaron Jones breaks more tackles. So that's my concern with him is he's too similar to what we already have. So
I want to ask you this: if you had to compare Dwayne McBride to any present NFL player or past NFL player, who would it be? Your best choice?
Comp.
Yeah. So I think a really good comp is former Cowboys running back Julius Jones' brother, Travis Jones. He's a lot like that. I think he's a guy that he could be a perennial 800 to 1,100 yard back. He probably a better comp. Forget I said that name. A better comp for him is probably Thomas Jones. That's the name I was looking for, not Travis Jones. So Thomas Jones maybe shades a little bit of David Johnson, but I think he's more Thomas Jones. So I think he's that type of player. He's a 4.55, 4.56 guy, but he's shifty, has really good balance, breaks a ton of tackles, and he's gonna get you the extra yardage that you need. So Thomas Jones, that's the name I was looking for.
Okay.
I actually like the comp that I think is Lance Zierlein. He gave him Marlon Mack.
Ooh, coach.
You gonna hit the button? No.
Yeah,
McBride it is.
So
Kobe
Dorian, you Giants.
Bennett's still there.
You Giants.
Giants. It's Jaron Hall to the Falcons. I like Jaron Hall, but
the Giants getting Dorian Williams 1 pick before us.
We're on the same wavelength. He said he sees the combo there. Got it.
But I mean, guys, what else do we need to say here? Bennett's on the board, right? I mean,
what DTs are available?
Man, I don't even care. Bennett's at 162, and we didn't roll the dice. You want to roll the dice again? Okay, no.
But Clark warming up to us earlier. We got him late.
Clark is still on the board. Clark is still on the board.
Oh,
wow.
Clark is still on the board, but Slade is there too.
I'm taking Clark.
I'm Clark.
So let's ask this: you have 7 pick difference. We're picking again 7 picks.
Oh man.
I think Bennett will still be there. I think either will still be there, but I think Bennett. I'm taking Bennett now and risking Clark in 7 picks.
As much as I love Clark, I can't pass on Bennett here.
Bennett.
Let's go with Bennett then.
Oh, come on, please. Come on. For the knee surgery, give it to me. For the knee surgery, give it to
We're
me.
good.
Yep, you got Clark.
Let's go.
Yep.
Let's
go. Hit it.
Let's go.
Yo, we killing this.
Do we take a quarterback here?
Linebacker.
Okay, all right.
Tight end.
Tight end.
So I'm seeing some Kuntz love in the chat.
I was like, there's tight end here now.
We can get wide receivers again just in case.
So, Nix, we talked about this before too. If you really want Hunter Lipke, this is probably where you're taking him.
I can't get him at 245.
In real life, probably not.
Okay, well,
I need to go
let me
watch
dream.
Kuntz.
Ooh, Shay. Shay brought up a guy that Nix talked about just earlier today. Is this Matt Landers territory?
Oh, indeed. I mean, again, there's too much on the board here. I think it has to be more of a 245. I think there's too much on the board right here. But I mean, he's right there. And again, you know, I just kind of been digging deep and looking at some different names down here, down towards the bottom. I mean, and of course, I guess you have some ties to him as well there, Matto. But spent some time over there with the Dogs. Toledo, ended up in Arkansas.
He was there 2 years.
6'4", 200 pounds, 4'3", 7-ish. But he runs hard after the ball gets in his hands. And for the size, he's shifty with the ball in his hands. Now, he's not the greatest route runner. He does separate at times. He needs some work, but there's traits there for him for sure. Like a lot of people like TJ Vasher, as we talked about before earlier, but I think he's a better prospect than TJ Vasher personally.
So the question I have for you guys with Landers, or really any wide receiver at this spot, like some people in the chat mentioned Puka. So Puka makes a lot of sense because he is a special teams guy as well.
Right.
Knowing Tank Dell could be a punt kick returner. So maybe Tank Dell potentially, and I hate to say it because he just made the All-Pro, but potentially is a guy that replaces Kevontae Turpin. Or if you keep Kevontae Turpin, you definitely need a wide receiver who could be a special teams player with Noah Brown leaving. So maybe that's Dennis Houston, an incumbent player that's already on the roster, or maybe that's a guy that you look to draft later in the draft. But if I'm looking this spot at wide receiver, I probably want a guy who's a special teamer, and I know Landers didn't do that at Georgia. I don't know if he did that for Arkansas. I don't think he did. So that would be my concern with him here. But I get it. Like I get the potential and what you're betting on, but I probably want somebody who has special teams value here.
Personally, overall, I'm probably pulling the trigger on Clayton soon here.
You know what? I like Malik Cunningham.
I like Malik Cunningham as well, but I feel like they're going to take soon. But I like Malik Cunningham as well. But I think right here with both those guys on the board, look, they've already said they're going to be committed to getting a quarterback this year to develop. And with those guys there, I just think it's going to be one of the. If those two guys are on the board, I think this is where they might pull the trigger for a quarterback, guys.
I mean, they said straight up they want a quarterback. So
out
of what's available, Tune would be the guy I'd take. And I think if you're looking at how PFF grades it, he'd be a great value here because they have him higher than where we're at by a big margin. But
right. They do have Cunningham higher as well too, for what it's worth.
How athletic is Clayton Tune?
Not as athletic as Malik Cunningham.
He's not. Let me say this though.
Terrible.
He's not as athletic as Malik Cunningham. He's a pretty decent runner though. Like he tucks and runs, and I was actually getting frustrated sometimes when I was watching Tank Dell film. Like, bro, throw the freaking ball. Stop tucking and running. So he will run. I'm trying to think of who is a good comp for him.
Who's that for?
He's more athletic than you think. He's definitely not Malik Cunningham, where he's a dynamic runner, but he can tuck and run and will do it. He's willing to do that.
Okay. Well, I'm fine with whatever you guys choose.
Okay.
I'm not taking a shrimp at quarterback, so Malik's out for me.
Fair
Clayton Tune, Will Mallory. Puka makes a ton of sense because he has some return value. He also can play slot and outside. So I actually like Puka quite a bit here.
What about D. Winters here, linebacker? We haven't got a linebacker yet.
Well, that's the one I was wanting, but I'm fine. However y'all want to go.
I mean,
He's a weak
pretty
side
good comp, actually.
linebacker.
Yeah, Will Greer actually is a pretty good comp.
Nice.
So, okay, so that'd be my two. Clayton Tune at quarterback or D. Winters here at linebacker. And I guess, and I will say, I guess Winters would probably give you some special teams help as well too.
It would help, yeah.
In here.
But then you have Devin Harper too, so you already have a linebacker that can do that. But it would be nice to add a second or third, really, because Jabril Cox.
I haven't done due diligence on the Jackson State kid. He's right there above Winters.
So scroll up. Is that who is it? What's the name? Right above D. Winters.
All right, I'm sorry. Let me scroll back.
So here's the thing: are we trying to get the fullback later on? Are we trying to get that fullback?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do.
I only have 2 picks though. I'm taking Hunter Lipke right now because he would immediately start.
Yeah,
he would immediately start, and nobody else
Okay.
in the spot would start unless you get a kicker, which we could also use.
Okay.
So for me, it's Lipke, but Tune makes a ton of sense. But also knowing we just signed Cooper Rush, I'm not as urgent. I don't have as urgent need for quarterback.
But Cooper Rush's deal doesn't preclude them from getting rid of him if they wanted to.
It doesn't. That's fair.
But can we get him undrafted though? Clayton Tune, will he go undrafted?
No, he'll get drafted.
Right.
Bring me Stetson Bennett as an undrafted free agent.
That's fair. So
I will say this as a Georgia fan: Stetson was not super popular in the locker room.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that for a quarterback.
Really?
Fair. All right. Well, do we want to go? All right. So the chat's big on Miller from linebacker. Y'all want to go Miller? Y'all want to go?
We'll go with the chat, man. The chat wants.
What's the chat want?
The chat wants Miller. It seems like.
Aubrey Miller. Is that where we're going? Jackson State.
Get him.
Okay. Also, yeah. All right. Boom. Put it on the board. Aubrey Miller, linebacker, and please Hunter Lipke be there. Oh, Clayton Tune's actually still there, but Hunter Lipke's there. We don't care, and we'll get Clayton soon in undrafted free agency.
I think. Well. All right, cool.
Don't
Say
care.
less.
Look, it's Hunter Lipke, and it's done.
No.
So, guys that are probably still available, like this is where you're looking at Puka Nacua. It makes a ton of sense right now. Clayton Tune or Malik Cunningham or even Tyson Bagent would make a ton of sense as an undrafted free agent. Yeah. Dom, they hated your pick, bro. Just to be clear, they hated Darnell right there. But I think he would be a really good pick. 31.
Yeah, they got him at number 70 on their big board.
Yeah.
But in 3 weeks, he might be like 41 or 28 or whatever. So
well, let's scroll down the list. They gave us a B for the trade. It wasn't even an A. They gave us a B for the trade. We get an A for Avila, B plus for Tank Dell, A for McGuire, B for McBride, A for Bennett, A for Clark, B plus for Mr. Miller. Shout out to the chat. B minus for Hunter for a grand total. They didn't grade our trade though. B plus.
They don't grade it if you force the trade, by the way. If you don't force it, they give you a grade.
I forgot that. Yeah. So B plus.
Thought it was pretty good.
And look, man, I mean, here's the thing, right? Offensive line, and that's the big thing we've talked about in the spaces and stuff and leading up to here. Defensive line wise, we're talking about the 1 second where it's at and indifferences with Neville Gallimore, for instance, and getting into, Osa where that is and things that are happening in that realm. So your little, what's going on here, right? Offensive line, you've kind of future-proofed yourself and you covered yourself, so you've really attacked the trenches on both sides as they've added and brought back certain people of the other positions. So, I mean, pretty happy about that. You get the perfect complementary back here, obviously, for Pollard with McBride. Tank Dell, love Tank Dell's game, and you get him at 63. Don't know if that's going to happen actually, but we get him at 63. You have McGuire here now with DA maybe moving on, or maybe he's a tradable piece, right? Maybe he's the piece where you go do something. Who knows? But here's the other thing about it. Fowler's not back in here yet. And we know what he meant to the rotation as well. So you recoup that. And obviously with D-Log getting a little longer in the tooth, you got some protection there. We get the big body for the middle. And, of course, we get the all-you-can. And a guy that can help you with some short yardage as well. Hunter Lipke here, too. So, yeah, really good draft. I know this was very painful for Matt Owen early with 2 offensive linemen.
I get it, though. Like, when I'm looking at, we traded back. And we got a starting left guard out of it. Well, actually, the left guard was our pick. But we got Tank Dell out of it and a guy that I think could immediately help your offensive line. So for me, that 2-for-1 I think makes sense.
10-4.
And again, see, like I just want you guys to know, like I'm flexible about. I'm not anti O-line in round 1.
I know.
I'm just anti and always being O-line in round 1.
Always O-line.
And we did it again, but it makes sense here.
We did it again.
So knowing how the draft felt, let me ask you guys this: I was leaning towards. If we didn't go offensive line, Bijan would have been my pick. Spoonie, you were saying Bijan immediately, and the chat was saying Bijan, Mozzie, and offensive line. Are you cool with Wright and Tank Dell instead of Bijan Robinson? Because that's ultimately what the trade became. I am.
Yeah, for me, I liked it. I liked how we did this. It was a little bit more different, of course. And especially for what Dom said earlier about looking at the future of his offensive line. Zach Martin's getting older. The right tackle spot when it comes to Steve, we don't know if he's going to be 100% healthy going into the season. So what we did in the trade back, we basically came in there and we put him emergency guys just in case things don't pan out. Again, we put in future guys as well. I love Professor O's idea of wanting to get that corner in that one tech. We didn't get him early, but the guys he mentioned, we still got him late in the round. And again, that corner is a future guy. The one tech Clark, he'll get some playing time. But overall about this draft, what I love the most is that majority of the guys that we pick will have a role on this team next year, just because of how we pick. So I loved every minute of it. Again, I love these scenarios. It can, how we change up. But again, B. John Robinson is definitely the favorite. Listen, he's the top 10 player. At number 20, I would take him. But I love the fact that how we look at the important stuff and say, hey, let's address the trenches. Without an offensive line, there's no running game. And I like how we did that.
I do want to bring this up too, because Stephen White, who always rocks with us, said Gerard Clark will not play. Well, first off, one tech in particular is a position. These guys don't play 50 and 60 snaps. They just don't. Even Vita Vea's, like guys like that, they don't play high-end level snaps. These guys get rotated out. It's just the nature of the game. And when you're in specifically pass rush situations, you may not have a one tech on the field at all. You may slide in like Chauncey Golston or Osa Digizua or Neville Gallimore or somebody like that. So these guys are getting rotated out frequently as it is. So in my opinion, knowing we don't have Carlos Watkins back yet, we may or may not have Hankins by this point. I think it absolutely makes sense to add because we did it last year with Ridgeway. You're just basically repeating the decision you made last year, and hopefully you don't have to cut the player because of a non-quarterback IR. So we're basically just righting the wrong we made last season with this pick, in my opinion.
Right. Facts. I mean, again, you got to make up for it. And, they're light there. And we're looking at the team and where they are currently right now. So, and of course, you look where you got it at and what happened there. Made a ton of sense. So, yeah, like I said, I just love the fact we really insulated both lines, offensive and defensive lines, and got that around. I think that was great value as well. So, I don't know. And Bennett, getting Bennett at 162. Look, I'll go on the board right now. I don't think there's no way that Ja'Cory Bennett's going to be on the board round 5, 162. I just don't think it's going to happen.
He was there, so we took him.
He was there, we took him. And, and as we go along here, right, we get to see some different names pop up here. Hey, guys, it's the first time we took McGuire in all 6, right? And part of the trade back and what we was able to do there kind of helped us secure getting the edge from Missouri. So, and Aubrey Miller, shouts to the chat here, getting him in the building. That might be the first time we got him in the building, too, on these mock drafts. So, some different names. And the first time we took Darnell Wright as well. So, definitely some different names here as we're 6 drafts in and we're seeing things kind of process and move around. But we have the nice moving in the ideas of what's happening and making it make sense within the context of what the Cowboys are doing via free agency, what we're looking at, and moving forward.
I do want to say real quick for the chat, the people that like to mock draft, I mentioned it to our group chat. It's a really good challenge to do 2 mocks back to back and don't repeat any player the second draft. So a lot of times the first round and maybe the second round may not fall the exact same, but there's guys that, and you see it in this chat, and I know I do it too, where I'm like, well, that guy's always available. I know that I can bet on that guy. Don't bet on them. Assume some other team sees what you see and they're off the board. And it'll give you an opportunity to learn more about other players that maybe you haven't spent as much time watching. So later in the draft, like D. Winters is a guy that commonly, if you look at mock drafts on Twitter for the Cowboys, he's frequently taken there.
Yeah.
Maybe check out Aubrey Miller. Maybe check out some of the other linebackers you haven't seen yet. I think that's a really good exercise. Just take one that whatever pick is there that you like, take it, and then immediately repeat the exact same exercise and go 7 straight rounds without repeating any of your picks. And just see how it looks.
True. Yeah, that's exactly what I've been trying to do each and every Friday since we've been doing this when I dropped 2 of them. So mission accomplished, and I need to start dropping these. Or maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll wait till we wrap up, and we'll put all of them together in one fell post with all of our mock drafts, day and date, and what we did with them. So, man, fantastic job, guys. Appreciate everybody that came through tonight and rocked with us. Spoony got a little bit late. Thank God you got here and helped us out here. And of course, next week we are running what positions?
Yeah, so next week's gonna be fun. We were working on trying to get interior offensive line this week, but we just didn't have enough time because we were kind of scrambling with Nick's getting a knee surgery. So shout out to Nick's. Hopefully he has a smooth recovery. It's going well. he's going to be running 40s before you know it. But next week, we're double dipping in the trenches. It's going to be fun. We're doing interior offensive line and defensive tackles. Then we're going to do edge and linebacker together, and then we're going to do running back and what else is tight end? Running back and tight end together. Then after that, we're going to pick 26 to 50 on our total combined big board, and then we're going to finish this series with a 1 through 25 with our final mock draft before the draft. So we have it all. It's already planned. We're ready to go. We're organized this year.
Big facts. We just see why Voorhees getting hurt. Tragic stuff. And it might be a guy, if we maybe late in the draft, the Cowboys look at it, maybe they pick and stash, something to look at moving forward. But with that being said, hopefully everybody has a fantastic weekend. Make sure you hit the sub, tell a friend to tell a friend. Make sure you hit us up over there. No, Edio, I'm not doing a space. I've done spaces all week. Y'all got me for a space earlier. We did the show tonight. I am going to kick back. No space. I say that now. We'll see what else. But no, I'm thinking no space tonight. But make sure you hit and hit us up on Twitter too, man, and give us that follow and everything else. We appreciate everybody for rocking with us. And of course, anything pops though, I will jump on and get the space rocking on Twitter for sure. And of course, next Friday we'll be right back here for episode 7 of our Mock Draft Friday series. Y'all have a great weekend. Peace.